Hello, 皆さん、こんにちは. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Yoshi Domoto. I'm the executive director of the Japan America Society of Georgia, and I'm so thrilled to present our program today to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, a celebration of Asians and Pacific Islanders in the United States. And like most commemorative months, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month originated with Congress. In 1977, Representative Frank Horton of New York introduced a House proclamation to make the first 10 days in May as AAPI Heritage Week. In the same year, Senator Daniel Inoue introduced a similar resolution from the Senate. Unfortunately, neither of these resolutions passed at the time, but in 1978, a new resolution was proposed that the President of the US should proclaim a week, which to include the 7th and 10th of the month during the first 10 days in May of 1979 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. And this resolution was passed by the House and the Senate and was signed by President Jimmy Carter on October 5th, 1978. So AAPI Heritage Month here in the US has a Georgia connection, obviously, as President Jimmy Carter was the governor of the state of Georgia before becoming president. So during the next decade, various presidents passed the annual proclamations for AAPI Heritage Week until in 1990, Congress made the observance into a month. And then in 1992, the observance became an annual observation as May as being the AAPI Heritage Month. So the month of May was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese to the United States on May 7th, 1843. And to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10th, 1869. The Japan American Society of Georgia celebrates Asian American Heritage Month this year through a screening of the short film First to Go, a story of the Kataoka family, a story of a young girl's father who was forced from his home and family in 1941 after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And he was the first, and 120,000 Americans were next to be forced to relocate to desolate internment camps throughout the country. And so we will be showing a short film screening of First to Go, story of the Kataoka family. And afterwards, we will have a behind the scenes talk with director and producer, Mr. Myles Matsuno. And we will talk about how we can find hope, love, and happiness in the darkest of places and explore how cultural understanding can lead to new ways of promoting peace and harmony in our lives together. So without further ado, we would like to start the film screening. It's about 20 minutes or so. And after the film screening, we would love to introduce the filmmaker and director and producer of the film, Mr. Myles Matsuno, and we will have a discussion and behind the scenes talk. So everyone, enjoy the film, and we will see you here in about 20 minutes or so.
Still going, he's up to the 25, and now he's hit and hit hard about the 27-yard line. Bruiser Kennard made the tackle.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Many years ago, my family asked me to write my legacy. I remember writing, "Where do I begin?" The FBI came unannounced, handcuffed my father. They targeted him. He was the first one taken in.
At that time, it was hard because you're Japanese. Nobody would hire you.
Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move.
We had to go into camp with just 1 or 2 suitcases per person. And then going there, we had to close down the shade. We couldn't look out. They wouldn't let us see where we were going.
Think a desert like Topaz, and you put all these barracks up, nothing but dust and dirt
So you were separated for how many years?
Maybe about 3 years.
The American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
And this was September 14th, 1942.
And that was the first letter you got, right?
Yeah, this is the first one I got.
Right. Wow. That was my time watching that film, and every time I see that film, it just gets me in the heart. Just wow, so powerful. But at this time, it is such an honor and such a pleasure to introduce the filmmaker, producer, and director of the film, Mr. Myles Matsuno. Born and raised in Los Angeles, Myles focuses on developing meaningful stories, as you just saw, that carry out strong messages through visual aesthetics. All his creations come down to two final factors: the audience and moments. He maintains a motto that his great grandfather held, which is honesty and kindness are best in business. I think we just saw that in the film that you just saw, but he holds true to core values and beliefs that cause his stories and films to inspire others. And certainly he has done that, I think, and then some through that film. So, Mr. Myles, thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for creating that film. Before we go into kind of the talk about the film and the behind the scenes story, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, your family, and your journey in becoming a filmmaker.
Yeah, thanks for playing the film. It's a little hard for me to watch this time. I haven't seen it in a bit, so my eyes are probably a little red. But oh shoot, don't cry. Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles. Um, I grew up in a loving household. My mom's from Mexico. My mom is from El Centro, which is right at the border of Mexico. Mexican American, and my dad's from San Francisco. They met in Los Angeles, and I grew up in the city. My dad worked in the entertainment industry, developing and making one sheet posters. So I was always kind of around the film industry, and complete opposite, right? Stills is very much different than motion. And then, I wanted to get away from Los Angeles. So I did what everybody that wants to get into film does. They moved to Tennessee. And I went to a small school out in Tennessee to get a different perspective on life. I think it was one of the best things I ever did. And it's right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And really helped me put me outside my comfort zone, and just got into filmmaking really just by myself, by grabbing a camera because I wanted to be an editor. So I had to teach myself how to shoot, how to direct, and then I kind of got into directing because of being able to bring people together to make a film, and um, just the teamwork behind what goes into making movies. And then after that first one, got the itch to keep going. Went to ABC, technical director for stuff like the Academy Awards and NBA Finals and stuff like that. At the same time, making short films, which long short films eventually led up to a feature film. And this was one of the short films that I made.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And gosh, I'm right there with you too. I'm still trying to kind of recover a little bit, but I know this film, First to Go, in particular, is very dear to your heart, obviously, as it is all about your family and your family story, certainly from your grandmother's experience. But why did you decide to direct and produce this documentary?
Yeah, so I started making this just so that I can have something to pass down for generations. I never intended it to, in the beginning, never intended it to go to the festival route, distribution, do any of that stuff. I really just wanted to capture the essence of those who came before me within my own family, and also educate myself, and then have something that I can show my two sons when they're older. Something that I can show them, like, this is where you came from. And so that's how it kind of started. And then one thing led to another, and Um, I was really scared to touch the story for such a long time because, you know, it is dear to my heart, but I also want to make sure that I do it. I tried to give everything that I could to it because I knew it'd be a long process, having to file with the government to get all the paperwork on my great grandfather, and then having to, drive to San Jose out here in California to go meet up with the daughter who provided that footage of Topaz for me to give me the use to be able to use it, just stuff like that. Like, it was a very, very long process, and filming in San Francisco. But I think it was totally worth it because now, not only do I have something that has been very educational to students and just people alike, and I feel like it's not it my intention behind it, there was no purpose or agenda behind it besides just to tell the honest story that my family had. So going into it, it's just like, what, like, this is what they say, this is what they gave me, and this is what I'm putting together, and that's what came out of it. So
Well, very powerful indeed. And well, like you, I'm Japanese American. My father's Japanese, my mother's sorry, my father's Japanese, my mother's American, and I was actually born in Japan, moved to America when I was young. So, and actually growing up, I had no idea about the Japanese American experience and the internment camps, and all that during World War II until maybe 8 years in college, and even then, just a little bit about it, and I didn't really find out really the details about this history of American history that no one really talks about until after I kind of looked into it myself. But when did you learn first about Order 9096, and did that change your perception as what it means to be a Japanese American? Kind of tell me that story when you first found out.
it definitely changed my perception of what it means to be a Japanese American. So, um, like you, like, it was, even though I grew up in California and my family, was obviously interned, it wasn't really talked about in my family. My dad had a printed out one sheet, or a printed out poster of that headline of my great grandfather. My aunt actually worked at the San Francisco Examiner, or I think it was the Chronicle, which I think they bought the Examiner, and so I think, like, she was able to get the negative somehow because she worked at the paper. So he blew it up, and so that was always at our house, and just hanging on the wall. And I never really read it in high school. I'm like, he'd like, oh, this is your great grandfather, and he's handcuffed by the FBI, and like, you're taught these things in high school, at least for me, but it's very, very briefly skipped over. I think we're doing a better job now, a little bit, in our educational system, but back, then when I was in high school, like, it wasn't talked about at all. Like, and and that was in California, right? Like, on the West Coast. So I can only imagine, where in other parts of the country where maybe it wasn't talked about, like, at all. And so, um, you know, I definitely had to teach myself once I got into college. Like you, like, I knew about it, but sad to say, like, I never really dove into it, like a lot of my other family did. And it wasn't until, I really wanted, just hanging out with my grandma and really wanting to show more interest of my legacy, of, like, where I came from, that I really started to dive into my backstory on both sides of the family, more so on this side of the family. And so yeah, I think it was a long journey. I would say I was probably 21ish when I really started, my eyes really started to open to everything about what actually happened, like visiting museums, trying to ask my family, trying to ask my grandma, and what happened, or my aunts, or whatever. And so and then, luckily, that footage that I found from 1998, I was able to, that was given to me, and that was Titoshi, like, talking about the camps when she was being interviewed back in 1998. So, just watching all that footage, eventually I started to just educate myself properly, and watching films and stuff like that. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I just got to put it out there, but I love your grandmother. Oh my gosh. Yeah, she's the quintessential Japanese obachan, right? I mean, she
Yeah.
reminds a whole lot about my obachan and my grandmother, and caring and nurturing and loving, but at the same time so strong too, right? So how did your
hilarious.
grandmother and all of the other Japanese Americans, incarcerated, such kind of harsh conditions, make the best out of kind of their situation in the camps? And how does love and happiness blossom in the darkest places, do you think?
Yeah, I get that a lot. And going into making the film, I always try to find good in the bad, in a lot of my films, like what we're put in situations, and I feel like what are some of the good things that can happen, and and this is like one where like why would you think there is ever be any good in this situation, right? But it's like what my aunt Toshi said is she said, like, like if it wasn't for camps, like you kids wouldn't be here, and that's how she met her husband in the camps, and that's like a whole side of my family that you know that I love dearly, and it's like they wouldn't even just to think like it took that in order for them to meet, and who knows like if my grandma or grandpa would have met, because my grandpa was best friends with my uncle Yutaka, who's no longer here anymore. But it's just how it all played out and everything like that. I think that that's how like good can actually come from bad situations, like when you think about it in that context. um, yeah, so I mean, there's little things like that, and obviously there's a lot more bad in it, but there's some good that comes from it.
Yes, most definitely. Um, what do you think were the hidden and underlying causes of the Japanese American internment and incarceration? I think we've come a long way, as you just mentioned, through our educational systems. We have a whole
Yeah,
lot to do to, I think,
a
um,
lot.
educate our children and our generations to come, and kind of make sure these types of things, never happen again. But, um, you know, you think this kind of divisive mentality still exists today, and how can we kind of overcome it?
Yeah, I do think it still exists, and I think you can kind of see it. And there's always two sides to everything, right? But I think just overcoming it by just being a community, being open minded, and being present in situations where I mean it sounds cliche, but like literally just loving on one another, right? So it's like how I mean the answer to that, and there's so many different ways you can go about like how to prevent situations like this, or just all the divisiveness that's going on even today, like that's pretty prevalent. I think that I mean it's not just one simple answer. I think there's a lot of different ways depending on the situation of how to approach something, you know.
Yes, most definitely. Well,
Sorry, there was like a garbage truck going by when I was talking. Yeah, so
no,
I
I didn't even hear it. So okay.
was like, oh great.
Your editing skills are so good that you edit, I guess, as we go along, hear anything. So but yeah, most definitely, I completely agree that definitely loving each other, right, and just kind of
Yeah.
showing that humanity. We just really take care of each other. Go a long way. But I think Asian Americans, Japanese Americans, like many other minority groups, is often described as being strong and resilient. We're sort of hardworking. We have that gumon mentality. Do you think that is a result of our experiences, such as the incarceration internment camps, or do you think our characteristics has helped endure hard times, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah, definitely on both. I think that like our characteristics, just having what we've endured as, Japanese Americans and other ethnicities, I think it comes down to like what you've experienced in life, right? Like, so I think that if you've experienced or your family's gone through some things, um, it really does make you who you are today. Like, like those characteristics of who you are um, really do come through. And so, I mean, it's pretty prevalent. Like when you see like making the best of the situations that you have, like in the camps, making rock gardens, like that's crazy. Like to think about like how beautiful, like they're in the desert. Like how do you even get stuff like how can your mind process to like make art and something so beautiful like that? It's why I can't even do that if I go to like Home Depot. Like that's just wild to me. So yeah, definitely.
And certainly, I think your grandmother was also talking about the flowers blossoming, and then the baseball games and the dances. There's just the little things that that they were able to kind of help endure all the harsh things, right? So
Yeah.
but like yourself, I think we both have similarities in that we have a growing family. And congratulations again on your new addition. But I want to show
3 days old.
to my sons very soon, at least my oldest one. But so, how do you plan to teach your kids about your family's history and the Japanese American kind of story as well? And do you plan to show your film and kind of talk about that? And yeah, so how do you want to kind of um, have your legacy move on with your kids?
Yeah, I've actually thought about that. Like, and my son's 2.5, my oldest, and I just had a newborn. His name's Kai, and he's was born on the 27th of this month. So we're trying to like uh, sleep as much as we can, get as much Z's as we can. But I think like I don't know. I've played out that process of like, how am I gonna like sit them down, and be like, hey, this is where you came from, or this is your family legacy. But I also don't want to like force it, if that makes any sense. I want to educate. I want to like tell them, but I want to make sure that they're aware, but also not hypersensitive. There's like a fine line that I'm trying to figure out how to do this. So I still got some time, but I do definitely want to bring this up, and I think it's something that's very, very, very important to bring up. Especially if it's hopefully by the time my sons are in high school, hopefully there's like a whole chapter devoted to this. And as well, as much as other maybe a book, but I think that that they teach in their educational systems, like part of their classroom environment. But I think that it's something that it's our responsibility to also teach our children the importance of what it means to be Japanese American, what it means to fight for what's right, what it means to fight for humanity, for all those things. And I think I think that it's definitely something that I'm definitely going to teach my children, and definitely gonna have this documentary played for them. And that's the whole reason why I made it, right? Like, so that I can have something to pass down for them for generations to come, so that one day they'll be able to show their children, and they can show their children, and maybe they'll all be in the metaverse by that point watching this thing, but who knows.
You have a 2.5-year-old and a 4-day-old, so you have stuff to kind of contemplate and think about the best way kind of teach your family history, right? But yeah.
Right.
Well, for all of our audience members, we'll be kind of switching to kind of audience Q&A and allowing you all to ask Myles some questions if you would like. So use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can certainly use the chat box as well. So think about some questions that you'd like to ask Myles, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any questions that you like. Myles, yours always open and forthcoming. So we appreciate you joining us, especially having a 4-day-old baby just born too. So I know you're fighting some sleep deprivation, but thank you again for being with us. But kind of turning gears a little bit. So tell us, I guess, some of your most recent projects, other than this film, First to Go. What other films have you worked on? And I understand you recently did a film based in the Southeast too, right? So tell us what that was all about.
Yeah, so I just we had our release last year. It was actually released in theaters, uh, and it played in Cleveland and out here in California. But it's called Christmas in July, and it was about and it's about a grandson who throws Christmas early for his grandmother who has Alzheimer's. So it's a very inspirational film about a small town coming together to do, good for the community and good for a family. So a lot of things that I focus on tend to deal with like inspirational stuff, like um, feel good movies, or just even if it is social justice driven or it's not. I feel like a lot of my stuff has, well, actually it does have like little hints of, even if it has nothing to do with social justice, I always drop little things in there, and and whether they're picked up or not. But I think that yeah, so that was a great experience. That one was my latest release. Working on a documentary right now that's in pre-production on the educational system, and also just a bunch of different projects. Stuff that I can talk about, some stuff that I can't talk about. But yeah, so yeah.
Well, great. I know. So Christmas in July, right? So
Yeah.
you can see that on, I think, Amazon and
Yeah, it's like it's
other.
on Amazon, Apple TV, most of the not Netflix, but most of the streaming platforms. Amazon's a big one, so everyone can like. I feel like everyone has Amazon these days for the most part. So it's like.
Well, July is coming up, so maybe we all can do a program Christmas in July and watch your film. But
And
so
that was cool, filming in the Southeast Tennessee. It's always more fun to film outside of like Los Angeles, at least for me, because the community gets so much more involved and they get so much more jazzed about it, and it just makes it more authentic. So.
well, Tennessee is a great state, and my wife is from Tennessee, but Georgia is Hollywood South now, so you will definitely have to come to Georgia, do some filming here, and maybe we can collaborate together on some things too, right? So you answer my next question about some upcoming projects, some things that are, I guess, will soon come to be that you can't talk too much about, but so kind of other than kind of the current projects that you're working on now, what are some of your kind of dream projects that you want to work on? What are some of kind of big aspirations you have that you want to do in the future?
So at the same time of making this documentary, I wrote a feature script on First to Go, and it's changed so many different times. But where it's at right now, I love it. And I was a finalist, semi-finalist at some of the biggest film festivals, screenwriting competitions. And that was during 2020, so like the height of the pandemic in 2021. And I feel like that is a dream project that I wish that I can actually make. And that would just, I mean, I would love to direct and make that film if the opportunity came up. So that's probably the biggest one that I have, honestly. And I've written so many different other feature films, and I have so many different. I have like an idea notebook that I write down all my ideas, but I feel like that would be the one that I would love to pursue. Not only just because it's so dear to my heart, but I also feel like it's important. It's an important topic, and I think that it would just. I just wish that I could make it.
Well, definitely sign me up. That would be definitely something to look out for in the future, right? Kind of a follow-up to that, I guess. Who would you cast? If you're able to make that film kind of come true.
Oh my gosh, I go through so many different people. Like at even a point, like I don't know, I was like, I don't even want to direct this. I would just want someone else, someone like my favorite directors to direct this thing. Um, yeah, his name is I'm blanking on his name. He was in Inception. He's a Japanese man. I would want him to play my great grandfather. What's his name?
Ken Watanabe?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Him. Um, just because I saw I think he's a fantastic actor, but I also saw a picture of him wearing like sport glasses and stuff that was very much from the 1940s in some random short film or something. And I was like, he looks like he can play my great grandfather, and he's a great actor. So maybe one day we can work together. But that would be a dream. And then I'm also big on giving people opportunities that are up and coming. People that don't have a name that people recognize or whatever. But it's just like, I don't. Whoever is best for the roles and whoever speaks to me during auditions is usually how I cast. So I feel like it would just be a long process in that sense.
Well, yeah. So everyone tuning in, actors and actresses who are aspiring, definitely reach out to Myles for maybe some future work, right? But Myles, kind of going to some questions from our audience. We have a question. So it's a remark or the way that your grandmother speaks about what happened. She says she was not bitter. Do you have any perspective on whether the people who were, imprisoned felt that what the U.S. government did was wrong? Is it possible that they felt that it was justified?
Yeah. she definitely says that she was not bitter like her mom says, and I always found that to be fascinating. Um, and it's like, how can someone that lived a life, a very full life, but also a life where everything was stripped from you, your rights and all that stuff, and um, to live a life of shiawase, like, it's just amazing to me, like happiness. And I think that where'd the question go? Oh, I'm going to click on it. And so, I do think that a lot of people felt that, what happened was definitely wrong. Everyone talked about how messed up and how wrong it was. But I think the younger generations, like my grandmother and also my Titoshi said, and a lot of the people that I talked to, they're so young that, for them, it was like they were going to school. They were just doing the same things, except, obviously they're not at home, and the situation is completely drastically different, so messed up in many different ways. But there's a lot of these kids were super, super young, right? So they're still playing with their friends. They don't think about the responsibilities of paying my mortgage on my house or having to do this or that, right? So for the young ones, they said they had fun, going to proms and going to baseball games, doing you know dances or whatever. Like, I have a yearbook, and I was going through the yearbook from Topaz from the Rams, and it's just crazy, like, to see, like, they designed it just like it was like a yearbook that we would get in high school. So they all felt like what happened was definitely wrong. You have the no, no, and yes, yes questions and stuff like that. So I think that, um, you know, yeah, I mean, there was no way I think that they felt like it was justified. I think that, some of them still served for the country because some of them still loved, or most of them still loved America. They're still proud. And that was another thing that was fascinating. Like, even though a lot of them felt like they were stripped, is like my grandmother still was proud to be an American, and my great grandfather was like, he was still happy that he came to America because he was given opportunities, and even though he didn't speak about it, and it definitely changed his life and perspective on America from what my grandmother was saying. Like, he was just put my head down, do what I gotta do, and I can still make and give my family the best life that I can give them. And I thought that was like fascinating. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered that entire question, but sometimes my mind just starts to go.
No, I think you totally did. So thank you. Um, a little bit more kind of on the lighter side, who are your favorite film directors? And some of your, I guess, maybe biggest impacts that you had in your career?
Yeah, I really like the first two that came to my mind is Darren Aronofsky. If Do you know that he did Requiem for a Dream? It's a very heavy film, but I very like the way how he focuses on addiction and very much real life human suffering. And so he's definitely somebody that's up there. And Cary Fukunaga, I've always thought he was very, very good. He just directed the 007, but he came out with Sin Nombre a long time ago. Was a winner at Sundance. Did an HBO series, True Detective. He hasn't had the best. I just recently found out about some of the stuff that's been going on with him. So but I don't know him personally, and I don't know everything. But those were the two people that came to my mind, focusing on their art and their craft.
All right, great.
And there's Steven Spielberg. I love Steven Spielberg. I think that he's awesome too.
So many, right? So, but yeah, wonderful. Well, we have another question now, this time through the chat box. So thank you for sharing your story and creating this beautiful work of art. I wish you continued success. What are your thoughts on the current level of AAPI representation in the film and TV industry here in the US?
I think there's a lot of work to still be done, but I do think we're making the right steps towards the right direction. There's an amazing organization called Gold House, that celebrates Asian film, Asian artists. I think that, I just hope that the things that are happening in the film industry um, are genuine. Like, I hope that these things that are actually progressing Asian film and actually giving voices to Asians, are here to stay, and isn't just like some temporary fix on an issue. So I think we are making a lot of strides in the right direction. I think that we just got to continue to fight for more and more representation, not just in the Asian communities, but a lot of minorities. I think that we just got to keep moving forward in that direction, because the one thing that I think keeps us together is stories, right? Something that unites everybody, no matter what the race is stories. And that's like, I think that's a universal thing. Music, stories, stuff like that. We can all relate to elements within and around that.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And so Myles, we have just a few more minutes, but maybe kind of one last question from me. We'll see if there's any other questions that come from the audience. But so what can individuals, organizations, communities, schools, what can we all do to bring people together to promote cross-cultural and cross-racial relationships, just to make sure that we all have a kind of much more peaceful understanding of one another, and really avoid these really hateful and kind of divisive kind of things that happen, especially during times of war, right? So what do you think from your perspective, what can we all do to prevent what happened to your grandmother and your family in the future, and really promote more love in our lives?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I like to do is like to listen. I like to listen and hear people out. And I think that's something that is very important to do. Like a lot of people just are so quick to just speak out their mind, but I really feel like if you just listen and try to put yourself in other people's shoes and listen to what their reasonings are, even if it's the worst reasoning you've ever heard in your life, like I feel like just listening and being like, let them know that you've been heard, so let's talk about this. And also I think stories too, stories bring people together. So I think that if you can relate to people, for example, with injustice, 3 years ago I was when after the festival circuit, I went to inner city LA, and I was able to relate with a lot of Hispanic kids. In the whole class was Hispanic kids, and about their family coming across the border, and them being first generation, and them having to like work really, really hard because they want to be the first kids to get their first college degrees. And I can relate with that too from my mom's side. So it's like one of those things that like this film spoke to them because of the story, right? So it's like that was a way to bridge the gap of bringing two complete different ethnicities together to be like, oh, we do have some similarities, so let's like try to work together and fight for something that's right. I feel like if we can continue to show that we are somewhat the same, in the sense of we're not always going to come from the same background, we're not always going to have the same ideas, same philosophies, but if we can connect and relate and be heard and listen, then I feel like that's a way that we can start to move forward and make progress.
Yes, I'm 100% right there with you. Thank you so much. And gosh, I think just more conversation, listening more, and just having that dialogue, goes a long way. So certainly everyone tuning in, every day we should listen to others, right? And then we should tell our own story too, and that will go a long way in being able to understand one another, and hopefully prevent anything like this that happened to your grandmother and your family, from ever happening again. So
Yeah, just making people aware.
all right. Well, Myles, we have just a minute or two, but any kind of final words of wisdom or any kind of messages you want to share with our group today?
Uh, uh,
Put you on the spot a little bit, right?
like, no, I don't really have anything to say besides, I guess, what my grandmother says, and my great grandfather, love and happiness and kindness is best in business, treating others with respect. So,
Right. So if we can all follow, your motto and your grandmother's motto and your family's motto, I think, the world will be a better place, right? So, but thank you again, Myles, for joining us today and sharing your film with us. For everyone tuning in, definitely check out Myles's website, has more information about First to Go, the documentary, and all of his other projects too. So definitely we'll be back in touch, and hopefully we can invite you in person, maybe with your entire family, to Georgia sometime, and hopefully we can not just meet online, but meet in person as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you again, and everyone tuning in. Thank you for joining us as well. Our next event is coming up actually this Sunday. We have a washoku cooking demonstration in which the official chef of the Consul General of Japan here in Atlanta will be showing us how to make mizuyokan, or a Japanese summery dessert. And they'll be followed by a special bento lunch from Nakato Japanese restaurant, in which the event will be held at. So definitely join us this Sunday as we learn how to make mizuyokan at Nakato Japanese restaurant. But that will be actually as part of the Peace Bell project, which all proceeds from that event will go towards our Peace Bell project. But when you walk into the entrance of the Carter Center, speaking of AAPI Heritage Month and President Carter signing the bill to make that official, but if you go into the Carter Center executive offices, one of the first things you'll see on display is a large Japanese bell. Because displayed, though, you probably don't know that it is a bell, or it's even there, but in fact this bell has an amazing story. The bell was actually casted in 1820 and comes from a temple called Shoganji, located in the town of Konu in Hiroshima Prefecture. But during World War II, Shoganji was forced to send a temple to the Japanese government to be melted down into ammunition. But luckily the war ended before the bell was melted down, and somehow it ended up in England, and from England to Florida, at which a member of the Japanese business community saw it and purchased it on behalf of the Japanese community and gifted it to President Carter to commemorate the opening of the Carter Center. So, but it's been on a platform at the entrance to the Carter Center, but the Japanese community with the Japan American Societies, Japanese Chamber of Commerce, the Consulate General of Japan, and Jetro Atlanta, we are all working together to build an authentic and traditional Japanese bell tower, the ones that you see in Japanese temples at the Carter Center. So definitely help us by coming out to our fundraising event this Sunday, or just kind of learning more about our project. Actually, all of the materials from Japan were cut down and prepared and cured. They're actually packing it as we speak, and everything will be shipped over to Atlanta very soon, in which we'll probably receive it end of June, early July-ish, in which we'll start building the foundation and building the actual tower in time for President Carter's 98th birthday in October. So we actually have about 80% of our fundraising efforts complete, and we just have about maybe 30, 40 more $1,000 to reach our goal. But definitely visit our website at www.jasgeorgia.org to learn more about the project and help us make this dream of ours to promote peace come true here in Atlanta. So, but thank you again, Mr. Myles, for joining us today, and everyone tuning in. And we will see you next time. Everyone stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.